Chapter 8: A Lesson in Recent History. Matilda O'Donnell's McElroy personal note. This interview taught me a history lesson I will never read in any textbook written on Earth. The domain has a much different view of events that we do. Official transcript of interview. Top secret. Official transcript of the U.S. Army Air Force Roswell Army Airfield. 509th Bomb Group Subject Ellen Interview 26/7/1947 First Session. The Domain Expeditionary Force has observed a resurgence in science and culture of the Western world since 1150 AD, when the remaining remnants in the space fleet of the old empire in the solar system were destroyed. The influence of their remote control Footnote 81. Hypnosis operation diminished slightly after that time, but still remains largely in force. Apparently, a small amount of damage was done to the old empire remote mind control. Footnote 18.2. Operation which results in a small decrease in the power of this mechanism. As a result, some memory of technologies that ISBIS already knew before they came to Earth started to be remembered. Thereafter, the oppression of knowledge that is called the Dark Ages, footnote 83, in Europe began to diminish after that time. Since that knowledge of the basic laws of physics, footnote 84, and electricity, footnote 85, have revolutionized Earth's culture virtually overnight. The ability to remember technology by many of the geniuses in the SB population of Earth was partially restored, but not so utterly suppressed as it was before 1150 AD. Sir Isaac Newton, footnote 86, is one of the best examples of this. In only a few decades, he single-handedly reinvented several major and fundamental scientific and mathematical disciplines. The men who remembered these scientists already knew them before they were sent to Earth. Ordinarily, no one would ever observe or discover as much about science and mathematics in a single lifetime, or even in a few hundred lifetimes. These subjects have taken civilizations billions and billions of years to create. As beings on Earth had only just begun to remember small fragments of all the technologies that exist throughout the universe. Theoretically, if the amnesia mechanisms being used against Earth could be broken entirely, its beings would regain all of their memory. Unfortunately, similar advances have not been seen in the humanities of the species of Earth, continue to behave very badly toward each other. This behavior, however, is heavily influenced by the hypnotic commands given to each species between lifetimes. Footnote 87. And the very unusual combination of inmates on Earth, criminals, perverts, artists, revolutionaries, and geniuses, is the cause of a very restive and tumultuous environment. The purpose of the prison planet is to keep its peace on Earth forever. Promoting ignorance, superstition, and war between species helps to keep the prison population crippled and trapped behind the wall of electronic force screens. Space have been dumped on Earth from all over the galaxy, adjoining galaxies, and from planetary systems all over the old empire, like Sirius, Aldebaran, the Pleiades, Orion, Draconis, and countless others. There are space on Earth from unknown races, civilizations, cultural backgrounds, and planetary environments. Each of the various SB populations have their own languages, belief systems, moral values, religious beliefs, training, and unknown and untold histories. These SBs are mixed together with earlier inhabitants of Earth who came from another star system more than 400,000 years ago to establish the civilizations of Atlanta, footnote 88, and Lemuria, footnote 89. Those civilizations vanish beneath the tidal waves caused by planetary polar shift, footnote 90. Many thousands of years before the current person population started to arrive. Apparently, the species from those star systems were the source of the original Oriental races of Earth, beginning in Australia. On the other hand, the civilization set up on Earth by the Old Empire prison system were very different from the civilization of the Old Empire itself, which is an electronic space opera, atomic-powered conglomeration of earlier civilizations that were conquered with nuclear weapons and colonized by species from another galaxy. The bureaucracy that controlled the former Old Empire was from an ancient space opera society run by a totalitarian footnote 91 confederation on planetary governments, regulated by a brutal social, economic, and political hierarchy, footnote 92, with a raw monarch as its figurehead. Footnote 93. This type of government emerges with regularity on planet when the citizens abandon personal responsibility for autonomous self-regulation. They frequently lose their freedom, who demented species who suffer from an overwhelming paranoia that every other being is their enemy who must be controlled or destroyed. Their closest friends and allies, whom they espouse to love and cherish, are literally loved to death by them. Because such species exist, the domain has learned that freedom must be won and maintained through eternal vigilance and the ability to use defensive force to maintain it. As a result, the domain has already conquered the government planets of the Old Empire. The civilization of the domain, although considerably younger and smaller in size, is already more powerful, better organized, and united by a egalitarian aspect decorum, footnote 94, never known in the history of the Old Empire. The recently despoiled German totalitarian state on Earth was similar to the Old Empire, but not nearly as brutal, and about 10,000 times less powerful. Many of the species on Earth are here because they are violently opposed to totalitarian government. Footnote 19.5. Or because they were so psychotically vicious that they could not be controlled by Old Empire government. Consequently, the population of Earth is disproportionately comprised of a very high percentage of such beings. The conflicting cultural and ethical moral codes of the species on Earth is unusual in the extreme. The domain conquest of the central Old Empire planets was fought with electronic cannon. Footnote 96. The citizens of the planets, forming a core of government from the Old Empire, are a filthy, degraded slave society of mindless, tax-paying workers who practice cannibalism. Violent automata race trucks and bloody Roman circus type entertainments are their only amusements. Regardless of any reasonable justification we may have had for using atomic weapons, they vanquish the planets of the Old Empire. The domain is careful not to ruin the resources of those planets by using weapons of crude radioactive force. The current US civilization is beginning to mimic some of the trappings of that civilization, especially in the design of airplanes, automobiles, ships, trains, and telephones. Likewise, buildings in the cities of Earth are thought to be modern or futuristic in their design, resemble the architecture of the Old Empire. The government of the Old Empire, before being supplanted by the domain, was comprised of beings who possessed a very craven intelligence, very much like the Axis powers. Footnote 97. During your recent World War, Jospin manifested precisely the same behavior of the galactic government that exiled them to eternal imprisonment on Earth. They were a gruesome reminder of the ageless maxim that NSB will often manifest the treatment they have received from others. Kindness fosters kindness. Cruelty begets cruelty. One must be able and willing to use force tempered with intelligence to prevent harm to the innocent. However, extraordinary understanding, self-discipline and courage are required to effectively prevent brutality without being overwhelmed by the malice that motivated their brutality. Only a demonic, self-serving government would employ a logic or science to conceive that an ultimate solution to any problem is to murder and permanently erase the memory of every artist, genius, skilled manager, and inventor, and cast them into a planetary prison, together with political opponents, killers, thieves, perverts, and dissembled beings of an entire galaxy. Once the Isbis expelled from the Old Empire arrived on Earth, they were given amnesia and hypnotically tricked into thinking that something else had happened to them. The next step was to implant the Isbis into biological bodies on Earth. The bodies become the human populations of false civilizations, which were designed and installed in the minds of the Isbis to look completely unlike their old empire. All of the Isbis of India, Egypt, Babylon, Greece, Rome, and medieval Europe were guided to pattern and built their cultural elements on these societies based on standard patterns developed by the Isbis of many earlier similar civilizations on Sun-type 12 class 7 planets have that existed for trillions of years throughout the universe. In the earliest times, the Isbis sent to prison Earth lived in India. They gradually spent into Mesopotamia, Egypt, Mesoamerica, Achaia, Greece, Rome, medieval Europe, and to the New World. They were hypnotically commanded to follow the pattern of a given civilization by the old empire prison operators. This an effective mechanism to disguise the actual time and location from the space imprisoned on Earth. The languages, customs, and culture on each false civilization are intended to reinforce amnesia because they don't remind the Isbis on Earth of the original Old Empire planets for which they were deported. On the very far back track of time, these types of civilization tended to repeat themselves over and over, because the Isbis who created them become familiar with certain patterns and styles, and stayed with them. It is a lot of work to invent an entire civilization, complete with culture, architecture, language, customs, mathematics, moral values, and so forth. It is much easier to replicate a copy based on familiar and successful pattern. A Sun-type 12 class 7 planet is the designation given to a planet inhabited by carbon-oxygen based life forms. The class of the planet is based on the size and radiation intensity of the star, the distance of the planetary orbit from the star, and the size, density, gravity, and chemical composition of the planet. Likewise, flora and fauna are designated and identified according to the star type and class of planet they inhabit. On the average, the percentage of planets in a physical universe with a peripheral atmosphere is relatively small. Most planets do not have an atmosphere upon which life forms feed, as on Earth, where the chemical composition of the atmosphere provides nutrition to plants and other organisms, which in turn support other life forms. When the domain force supports the Vedic hymns, footnote 98. to the Himalayas region 8,200 years ago, so human societies already existed. The Aryan people invaded and conquered India. Footnote 99. Bringing the Vedic hymns. Footnote 100 to the area. The Vedas were learned by them, memorized and carried forward verbally for 7,000 years before being committed to written form. During that span of time, one of the officers of the Domain Expeditionary Force was incarnated on Earth as Vishnu. Footnote 101. He is described many times in the Rig Veda. He is still considered to be a god by the Hindus. Vishnu fought in their religion's wars against the old empire forces. He is very able and aggressive as being, as well as a highly effective officer, who has since been reassigned to other duties in the domain. This entire episode was orchestrated as an attack and revolt against the Egyptian pantheon, installed by Old Empire administrators. The conflict was intended to help free humankind for implanted elements of the false civilization that focused attention on many gods and superstitious ritual, worshipped remanded by the priests who managed them. It is all part of the mental manipulation by the old empire to hide their criminal actions against the species on earth. Or priesthood or prison guards were used to help reinforce the idea that an individual, as only a biological body, is not an immortal spiritual being. The individual has no identity. The individual has no past lives. Footnote 102. The individual has no power. Only the gods have power, and the gods are a contrivance of the priests who intercede between men and the gods they serve. Men are slaves to the dictates of the priests who threaten eternal spiritual punishment if men do not obey them. What else would one expect on a prison planet where all prisoners have amnesia and the priests themselves are prisoners? The intervention of the domain force on Earth has not been entirely successful due to the secret mind control operation of the old empire that still continues to operate. A battle was waged between the old empire forces and the domain through religion's conquest. Between 1500 BCE and about 1200 BCE, the domain forces attempt to teach the concept of an individual, immortal spiritual being, to several inflation beings on Earth. One such instance results in a very tragic misunderstanding, misinterpretation, and misapplication of the concept. The idea was perverted and applied to mean that there is only one SB, instead of the truth that everyone is an SB. Obviously, it was a gross incomprehension and not an unwillingness to take responsibility for one's own power. The old empire priests managed to corrupt the concept and individually immortality into the idea that there is only one all-powerful SB and that no one else is or is allowed to be an SB. Obviously, this is the work of the old empire amnesia operation. It is easy to teach this altered notion to beings who do not want to be responsible for their own lives. Slaves are such beings. As long as one chooses to assign responsibility for creation, existence, and personal accountability for one's own thoughts and actions to others, one is a slave. As a result, the concept of a single monotheistic God resulted and was promoted by many self-proclaimed prophets, such as the Jewish slave leader Moses, footnote 103, who grew up in the household of the Pharaoh Amenhotep III, footnote 104, and his son Akhenaten, footnote 105, and his wife Nefertiti, footnote 106, as well as his son Tutankhamen, footnote 107. The attempt to teach certain beings on Earth the truth that they are themselves is Bees was part of the plan to overthrow the fictional, metaphorical, anthropomorphic panoply of gods created by the Old Empire mystery cult called the Brothers of the Serpent. Footnote 108. Known in Egypt as the priests of Amen. Footnote 109. They were very ancient, secret society within the Old Empire. The pharaoh Akhenaten was not a very intelligent being and was heavily influenced by his personal ambition for self-glorification. He altered the content of the individual spiritual being and embodied the content of the sun god Aten. His pitiful existence was soon ended. He was assassinated by Mariam and Parenefer, two of the priests of Amen, or Amen, which the Christians still say, who represents the interest of the Old Empire forces. The idea of one God was perpetuated by the Hebrew leader Moses, footnote 110, while he was in Egypt. He left Egypt with his adopted people, the Jewish slaves. While they were crossing the desert, Moses were intercepted by the operative of the Old Empire near Mount Sinai. Moses was tricked into believing that this operative was the one God through the use of hypnotic commands, as well as technical and aesthetic tricks which are commonly used by the Old Empire to trap its bees. Thereafter, the Jewish slaves who trusted the words of Moses implicitly, they worship a single God they call Yahweh. Footnote 111. The name Yahweh means anonymous, as the Isbi who worked with Moses could not use an actual name or anything that would identify himself or blow the cover of the amnesia prison operation. The last things the covert amnesia, hypnosis, prison system wants to do to reveal themselves openly to the Isbis on Earth. They feel that this would restore the inmates' memories. This is the reason that all traces of physical encounters between operatives of space civilization and humans is very carefully hidden, disguised, covered up, denied, or misdirected. This old Empire operative contacted Moses on a desert mountain top and delivered the 10 hypnotic commands to him. These commands are very forcefully worded and compel an SB into utter subservience to the will of the operator. These hypnotic commands are still in effect and influence the thought patterns of millions of SBs thousands of years later. Incidentally, we later discovered that the so-called Yahweh also wrote programmed encoded the text of the Torah, which when it is read literally or in its decoded footnote 112 form will provide a great deal more false information to those who read it. Ultimately, the Vedic hymns become the source of nearly all of Eastern, their religions, and were the philosophical source of the ideas common to Buddha, footnote 113, Lao Tzu, footnote 114, Zoroaster, footnote 115, and other philosophies. The civilizing influences of these philosophies eventually replaced the brutal idolatry of the old empire religions and were a true genesis of kindness and compassion. You asked me earlier what the domain and other space civilizations don't land on Earth or make their presence known. Land on Earth? Do you think we are crazy or want to be crazy? It takes a very brave SB to come down through the atmosphere and land on Earth because this is a prison planet with a very uncontrolled Pacific population, and no SB is entirely proof against the risk of internment, as with the members of the Domain Expeditionary Force who were captured in the Himalayas 8,200 years ago. No one knows what SBs on Earth are going to do. We are not scheduled to invest the resources of the domain to take total control of all space surrounding the area at this time. This will occur in the not too distant future, about 5,000 Earth years, according to the time schedule of the domain. At this time, we do not prevent transports from other planetary systems or galaxies from continuing to drop space into the amnesia force screen area. Eventually, this will change. In addition, Earth inherently is an highly unstable planet. It's not suitable for settlement or permanent habitation from any sustainable civilization. This is part of the reason why it's been used as a prison planet. No one else would seriously consider living here for a variety of simple and compelling reasons. 1. The continental land masses of Earth are floating on a sea of molten lava beneath the surface, which causes the land masses to crack, crumble, and drift continually. Footnote 116. 2. Because of the liquid nature of the core, the planet is largely volcanic and subject to earthquakes and volcanic explosions. 3. The magnetic poles of the planet shift radically, about once every 20,000 years. Footnote 117. This causes a greater or lesser degree of devastation as a result of tidal waves and climatic changes. 4. Earth is very distant from the center of the galaxy and from any other significant galactic civilization. This insulation makes it unsuitable for use, except as a pit stop or jumping off point along the way between galaxies. The Moon and asteroids are far more suitable for this purpose because they don't have any significant gravity. 5. Earth is a heavy gravity planet with heavy metallic soil and a dense atmosphere. This makes it treacherous for navigational purposes. That fact that I'm in this room as the result of an in-flight accident, in spite of the technology of my craft and my extensive expertise as a pilot, are proof of these facts. 6. There are approximately 60 billion Earths, like Sun Type 12, Class 7, planets in the Milky Way galaxy alone, not to mention the vast expanses of the domain, the territories we will claim in the future. It is difficult to stretch out resources to do much more than a periodic reconnaissance of Earth, especially when there are no immediate advantages to invest resources here. 7. On Earth, the most SB are not aware that they are SBs or that there are spirits of any kind. Many other beings are aware of this, but nearly everyone has a very limited understanding of themselves as an SB. One of the reasons for this is that SBs have been waging war against each other since the beginning of time. The purpose of these wars has always been to establish dominations by one SB or group or SBs over another. Since an SB cannot be killed, the objective has been to capture and immobilize SBs. This has been done in a nearly unlimited variety of ways. The most basic method to capture and mobilize an SB and through the use of various kinds of traps. SB traps have been made and put in place by many invading societies, such as the one that established the old empire, beginning about 64 trillion years ago. Traps are often set up in the territory of the SBs being attacked. Usually a trap is set with the electronic wave of beauty to attract the interest and attention of the SB, where the SB moved toward the source of the aesthetic wave, such as a beautiful building or beautiful music. The trap is activating by the energy put out by the SB. One of the most common trap mechanisms uses the SB's overthrow energy out when the SB tries to attack or fight back against the trap. The trap is activated and energized by the SB's own through energy. The harder the SB fights against the trap, the more it pulls the SBs toward it and keeps them stuck in the trap. Throughout the entire history of this physical universe, vast areas of space have been taken over and colonized by SB, societies who invade and take over new areas of space in this fashion. In the past, these invasions have always shared common elements. 1. The overwhelming use of arms, usually with nuclear or electronic weapons. 2. Might control of the SPs in the invaded area through the use of electroshock, drugs, hypnosis, erasure of memory, and the implantation of false memory or false information intended to subjugate and enslave the local SB population. 3. Takeover of natural resources by the invading SBs. 4. Political, economic, and social slavery of the local population. These activities continue in present time. All of the SB on Earth have been members of one or more of these activities in the past, but as an invader or a part of the population being invaded. There are no saints in this universe. Very few have avoided or been exempted from warfare between SBs. Well, here we most likely talking about 5 missing civilizations. So, I thought. SBs on Earth are still the victims of this activity at this very moment. The between lives amnesia administered to SBs is one of the mechanisms of an elaborate system of old empire. SB traps that prevent an SB from escaping. This operated is managed by an illicit renegade secret police, footnote 118, force of the old empire, using false provocation operation to disguise their activities, footnote 119, in order to prevent detection by the open government, their domain, and by the victims of their activities. There are mind control methods, development by government psychiatrists. Footnote 120. Earth is a ghetto. Footnote 121. Planet. It is the result of the intergalactic holocaust. Footnote 122. SBs have been sentenced to Earth either because 1. They are too viciously insane or prone to infection as part of any civilization, no matter how depraved or corrupt. 2. Or they are revolutionary threat to the social, economic, and political caste system that have been so carefully built and brutally enforced in the old empire. Biological bodies are specifically designed, are designated as the lowest order of entity in the old empire caste system. When an SB is sent to Earth and they tricked on coerced into operating in a biological body, they are actually in a prison inside a prison. 3. In an effort to permanently and irreversibly rid the old empire of such untouchables, their internal identity, memory, and abilities of every SB is forcibly erased. This final solution, Proton 123, was conceived and carried out by the psychopathic criminals who are controlled by the old empire. The mass extermination of untouchables and prison camps created by Germany during World War II were recently revealed. Likewise, the SBs of Earth are the victims of spiritual eradication and entire slavery inside frail biological bodies, inspired by the same kind of craven hatred in the old empire. The kind and great inmates of Earth are continuously tortured by butchers and lunatics who are controlled by the old empire prison operators. The so-called civilization of Earth, from the age of useless pyramids to the age of nuclear holocausts, have been a colossal waste of natural resources, a perverted use of intelligence, of the overt impression of the spiritual ancients of every single SB on the planet. If the domain sent ships to every corner of the universe in search of hell, their quest could end on Earth. What greater brutality can be inflicted on anyone to erase the spiritual awareness, identity, ability, and memory that is the essence of oneself. The domain has as yet been unable to rescue the 3,000 species of the Expeditionary Force Battalion either. They are first to inhabit biological bodies on Earth. We have been able to recognize and track most of them for the past 8,000 years. However, our attempts to communicate with them are usually futile. Are they unable to remember their true identity? The majority of lost members of the domain force has followed the general progression of Western civilization from India into the Middle East, then to Chaldea and Babylon into Egypt, through Achaia, Greece, Rome into Europe, to the Western Hemisphere, and then all around the world. The members of the Lost Battalion and many others it's been on Earth can't be valuable citizens of the domain, not including those who are vicious criminals or perverts. Unfortunately, there has been no workable method conceived to emancipate the species from Earth. Therefore, as a matter of common logic, as well as the official policy of the domain, it is safer and more sensible to avoid contact with the SB population of Earth until such time as the proper resources can be allocated to locate and destroy the old Empire Force screen and amnesia machinery and develop a therapy to restore the memory of an SB.